What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of NJ Healthy Heat. I've got another great guest. He comes from the world of Driveline. He's also a fellow ex-teammate of mine. We played together in the summer league of the Northwoods. I'm going to give him the opportunity to introduce himself, but I'm super excited to have him on. He's going to be somebody who's going to drop a lot of knowledge, the things that Driveline's doing right now with the data that they have, not only on the pitching side, which where they kind of originated, but on the hitting side as well as on the team development side. They actually have some teams now. I'm excited to talk about that. So without further ado, Tyler Kozlowski.
Thanks for having me on. It's yeah, what's it been? 10 years since we played together?
Something like that, man. What I'll say too
Yeah.
before you go, man. Hey, anybody out there listening, you play baseball long enough, man. You keep relationships, you be a good person all the way through your career, and you get to have conversations like this 10 years down the road. You never know where people go. I've talked to people, who I played high school with that are now coaches at D1 programs that I've been connected with now or haven't been connected with for like 10 years. Baseball, man, it'll bring you a lot of connections. So sorry to cut you off there, but wanted to make sure that people
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, for sure. I was only there for a hot minute in the Northwoods with you, but that was a fun team to be around.
Definitely.
Yeah, so yeah, Tyler Kozlowski, been with Driveline for just about 2.5 years. Currently the high performance coordinator in Scottsdale, Arizona. Started out as a intern. I interned from December of 22 to May 23, and then became the lead trainer. And then recently transitioning to more of like a coordinator role.
And so for those that don't know, can you just give us like the, you know, 2 minute elevator pitch of Driveline? I think most people who are going to listen to this have an idea, but most people probably have never been to Driveline and
Mhm.
don't really know the depths of what y'all do. So can you just give us the insight of what Driveline is?
Yeah, we are a data-driven player development organization. We like to think ourselves as like the world's leading data-driven baseball performance center. We have locations up in Seattle, in Tampa, Florida, and then the one that I'm at in Scottsdale, Arizona. Um, Pretty high level clients. I'd say probably like 40% of our clients are pro guys. The rest are a mix of college and high school guys. Yeah, if you just kind of like look through the Instagram, I don't want to like name drop any of the athletes, but you can kind of scroll through the Driveline Instagram and see the athletes that we're working with.
Definitely. Yeah, y'all are doing it at a high level, have been doing it at a high level. I remember when Driveline first came out, me and my college were actually one of the first schools that I knew about that was really just implementing, taking what Driveline said to heart and, getting on the weighted ball programs. My coach was definitely ahead of his time. Reading the
Hmm.
workouts, we blended the Driveline throwing program and like arm care protocols with like the Eric Caresi strength training, and like we just went
Hmm.
from a team that nobody had heard of to 7, 8 dudes getting drafted out of that class from Lenore Ryan University. It ended up being an absolute home run for us as a program. So I'm a big believer in the stuff that y'all have done. I know that there's not there's definitely a lot of people out there who aren't a big believer in what y'all do, and
Hmm.
they'll living down the hill that weighted balls can be a detriment to youth athletes. And maybe that's where we start right here with this conversation. Like,
Hmm.
you know, in the world of baseball now, right? Weighted balls have gotten such a big part of it and become a big part of it. I think, most organizations are cool with it. However, there seems to be this conversation around, you know, weighted balls leading to arm injuries and not using them properly. I'm just curious, like, what's your take on like weighted balls and how they're being used, not just at the professional level, but more so at like the
Hmm.
youth high school level?
Yeah, and there's not like everything is has like pros and cons. It's just like how you're going to implement it. A baseball weighs 5 ounces. I don't know what a football weighs, but if you think like weighted balls are bad for baseball players, then guys should never throw a football because a football weighs heavier than a baseball. Or guys should never throw a javelin. Like It's not like the specific tool, it's just like how you're implementing things. If you're going out there and you're ripping a 3 ounce or a gray ball doing pull downs all the time, like yeah, you're gonna get hurt. But if you're on like a structured program and you progress correctly, like there's no way that like switching from a 5 ounce to a 6 ounce or a 4 ounce is going to cause that much harm. It's just about how you're coaching it and how you're implementing it.
And what is the proper way to implement it? In y'all's opinion, how do y'all go about deciphering whether or not a guy needs weighted balls? I mean, at the professional level, it's probably much easier because, their body can handle, they've built the foundational strength that they need to
Mm,
push their bodies to the max. But let's talk about, a high school kid. How do you know if this kid's ready to go? Because I think most kids I don't know if they truly believe. I don't think kids I think we think that kids aren't as smart as they are. I don't think kids think that like weighted balls is like this magic pill that you start throwing and like they're instantly going to get it. I think that they believe though
mm,
that it's an absolute must in order to gain velo, whereas like that's not necessarily true because guys like you and I, like we kind of grew up in high school without weighted balls, and like we definitely had
mm,
guys, and a lot of guys still threw hard in the 90s, early 2000s, but now we've seen over, the advancement of what y'all's data has provided, what
mm.
other companies are out there providing, that like it's a great tool that when implemented right. But again, how do you decipher when is the right time?
Yeah. I would say a majority of our high school guys will throw them. And again, it's like how you implement them. I think a big part of why they're so successful is that say you're a high school pitcher who is 15, 16 years old, you've made 10,000 throws or however many throws you've thrown in your lifetime, like way more than that. You're creating habits based on the feel of holding a baseball. And what those squishy weighted balls do is it kind of takes you out of the mindset of, oh, I'm throwing a baseball, I need to move like this. So I think grabbing a yellow ball, which is I think it's a little bit lighter than a baseball, is going to put you in a different mindset to get you into different positions. So whether you're working on certain drills that will help your hip rotation, your T spine, hip shoulder separation, your rotational velos, like whatever you're working on, it's just a good tool to kind of like get you out of the mindset of I'm throwing a baseball at the catcher. Like you're throwing it at a wall, like you can just kind of like take yourself out of I need to throw a strike or a perfect pitch on this one, to be able to work on certain things, and then over time you take those movements into throwing a baseball for strikes. So I would say like most of our guys will kind of like throw them right away, but it's not like they're doing 200 throws a day of it. It's we're starting with pivot picks where we're going 50% or whatever, we're just working our arm action and we're trying to get out of that mindset of I'm throwing a baseball, I need to be perfect. These are what my mechanics have always been, and this is what they're going to be. It kind of changes your mindset a little bit.
Definitely, definitely. So when a guy, because I've definitely like done a deep dive into y'all's programming. Like I've got all the books, I've read everything, the Hacking Kinetic
Mm,
Chain, I've read the youth stuff. I mean, I've read everything. When it comes to like a high school kid who wants to get on them, you know, what would you suggest as far as like here's how you implement them, right? Because you can't just go from never having thrown weighted balls to just like every single day you're going to be implementing them into your drill work.
mm,
Most kids these days, I think, need to even start with, in my opinion, start with the drill work with a 5 ounce ball and just be like, all right, these are the throwing drills that we're going to do.
mm.
Because I think when you're trying to implement not just the weighted balls, but then the new drills, it can be a lot for a kid who maybe doesn't understand his own body. So what would you suggest as far as like how to I guess on ramp them into the weighted balls?
Yeah, we when guys come in having never touched the weighted balls before, it's a requirement minimum 6 weeks of an on ramp. So they're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday, higher intent days, which for their higher intents would be like a B day max. So you're doing 50, 60, 70% effort. Like we're not ramping up at all. And we're just making sure that you're moving correctly before we get into like those more higher intent throws. So they're doing maybe it's Monday, a B day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all recovery days, Friday, B day. So we're taking 2 out of the 5 days, 6 days if you include Saturday, where they're higher intent days. But like the max they're throwing is like 60%, 70%,
Yeah.
just to make sure that they can handle that throughout that 6 weeks. Um, each week will kind of be like a different structure. So if you go Monday, Friday, maybe next week it's just Wednesday, and then the next week it's Monday, Friday, then just Wednesday. So we're kind of week to week kind of switches up a little bit, but we're making sure that we can handle those loads before we can progress them. Same time, that's a great time to like really get after it in the weight room. If our throwing stress is not very high, we can really get after it in the weight room, make sure that we're moving correctly. If we're like a little bit more physically developed, that's when we can start like pushing weights a little bit more, to try and put on like get some hypertrophy, some accumulation done, before we can handle like that higher intent throwing.
Yeah. So based on the schedule that you're kind of telling me, it sounds like no guy can even get on weighted balls unless it's an off-season programming. With 6 weeks to come up, right? There's no way that a guy can be able to start his, throwing program middle of the season, or hey, season just got done and I want to get into weighted balls for the first time, but oh, by the way, I'm also playing, summer travel ball. It just doesn't go hand in hand, it sounds like. So can you expand on that?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of kids will just, they'll see their buddies doing it and their buddy will show them a drill. And the next thing you know, they're throwing weighted balls for the first time
Hmm.
in season when it's just like, hey, don't do that. Like, don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, in season, it's all about just like managing the workload. So if we're halfway through a season, you're playing, say your 40 game schedule, you're about 20 games in, and then you just add a brand new stimulus in there where you've never done it before. That's just recipe for injury. So a smarter way would be, wait to that end of the season and then give yourself like a week to kind of chill out, and then we start that on ramp. But yeah, when guys add new stimulus in season, or say you go from a 3 day a week lifting schedule to a 4 day, 5 day, and like keep the volume the same, like that's just recipe for disaster. That's what I think we're really good at Driveline, is just tracking and managing workload. So have you seen the pulse straps that
The
pitchers will
pulse.
wear? Like, yep. So we're measuring how many throws guys are making, like what their arm speed is, all that kind of stuff. Tracking all that, and then tracking weight room volume, how many sprints they're making, how much like tonnage they're pushing on a day to day, to make sure that we're not having huge spikes in that workload throughout the season, throughout the whole year, which is just that's when injuries and bad things can happen.
Definitely, definitely. I think what the Pulse is doing is incredible. I think it's something that every kid should look into, but obviously it's something that maybe not every kid can afford. And
Mm,
and maybe sometimes they can't get into, the driveline programming or into working with somebody like me who understands it all and like can help them progress their game. So my question to you
mm,
is just like when you're looking when you're maybe speaking to a kid who can't come into the facility, who can't afford anything, or maybe just doesn't know what's going on out there in the world of baseball and listens to this conversation, what can that kid do if all he's got is just a bucket of baseballs and some bands, his weight room, and a desire to get better? How does that kid get better and compete against the
yeah.
guys that you guys are training?
Yeah, at that point, you just have to, kind of go old school where you're writing everything down. We have the luxury of apps and different technologies that does all that tracking for us. But if you don't have that, pen and paper. Write down how many throws per day you're making. How If you have a radar gun, see what the velo is. If you're going off a distance, or just like RP, like how you're perceiving how hard you're throwing that day. Being able to track that day to day, and making sure that you're not having a string of 3 or 4 days in a row where you're feeling like you're kind of like redlining each day. So we want to like hit it hard one day to kind of like relax, let our nervous system bounce back. Next day we can let it eat a little bit more. Um, yeah, I think just like writing everything down what you're doing. Previous jobs of mine, without all that tech, it's pen and paper, writing down, oh, I benched 200 pounds today for 6 reps. Write that down. Next week, check it day to day, track it, and we kind of progress that way.
Definitely. I think one of the biggest things with the kids that I work with and the amount of questions I get in my own Instagram inbox is how to regulate their week as far as like throwing volume, throwing intensity. They don't know what days they're gonna pitch. A lot of these kids in high school still are two-way players. What advice or how would you, let me ask you this. How would you structure or how would you tell a kid to structure his week if he's trying to do it on his own and he plays two positions? He's a position player who also pitches. And so he's getting the stimulus of having to throw every single day, having to be ready. He might be playing
Mm.
shortstop, he might be playing center field, whatever it is. He's got to be ready to go. So he's playing, catch at 90 to 120 feet almost every single day just
Mm.
to get his arm ready. And then he's also, their go to relief guy or a guy who starts on the mound with a coach who, not that all coaches are bad. I'm not saying that at all, but maybe with a coach who just doesn't seem to care that this kid is, being worked every day. Like, how does that kid
Mm.
protect himself?
Yeah, that's really hard to do. And I'm sure me and you have both done it back in the day. Where you just like you got to be ready to go. So in season, number one thing is like is the game. So anything you're doing outside the game, is where you need to like take a look at it, and cut back the volume there. So if you're the shortstop and you're potentially throwing tomorrow, starting the game tomorrow, um, pre-game you don't need to throw 200 times. You don't need a long toss that day. You don't need to like let it eat when you're warming up. Like it might look bad to the coaches or guys in the stands if you're, kind of like lollipopping it across the field. Um, but you need to know that you need to start tomorrow. You need to be able to throw, 3, 4 days in a row. So I'm not saying like take reps off by any means, but you just need to be smart where you're kind of like self-regulating all that stuff. Um, don't be dumb outside baseball. Like if you're gonna have to play a couple days in a row. Like make sure you're getting your sleep, you're getting your food, your nutrition in, getting all your recovery in as fast as you can, because that stuff adds up if you're going out, eating McDonald's after your game or not drinking any water, going and sitting in a hot tub for 2 hours after the game. Like that's just gonna tax you even more. So get your sleep. And then when you do have a day um, that you can kind of take off or you don't have games like in practice, like make 10 throws, just kind of like get your arm moving a little bit, get your legs moving around a little bit, but you don't need to throw 100 times on an off day. Like just it's okay to chill out.
So let's just use this example. Let's use the example of a kid who's a two-way player and he's starting, every week. Let's hopefully say that he's on the same schedule and he's starting, every 7 days, right? Let's call it Friday.
Mm,
What is that
mm,
kid in a drive line sense of, monitoring workload? What does that workload schedule and management look like? How do they go about it?
yeah. How many games per week?
Right now, I would say that most kids are playing 3 or 4 games a week.
Back to backs every other day. What's
Every
the
other
schedule
day,
kind of
yeah,
looking like?
yeah. Let's go Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday for this
And then you
example.
said Saturday's the
Sun,
start day.
let's go. We'll go Saturdays to start day, sure.
Yeah. So Sunday would probably be like a
With
like off
practices,
day.
with practices in on Wednesday and Friday, off Sunday.
Yep. Um, so kind of depends. Like if he's a physically developed guy who can kind of handle a little bit more, if he's kind of like a string bean, um, kind of depends how he can bounce back. So if you would think throws Saturday, Sunday's probably pretty banged up. Don't need to do much that day. Monday would be like a recovery throwing day before. Like you don't need to make a ton of throws pregame. Just make sure you're ready for the game. Same thing Tuesday. Like just make sure we're ready to play. Don't need to make like 100 throws. So just kind of like nice and easy those days. Enough throws to make sure you can play the game. Wednesday, depending on your feeling, would probably be maybe like a B day off the mound, where you're not really letting it eat too much, more just like kind of like a side pen
Short
for guys.
box. Yep.
Yeah, yep. Kind of like feel the slope, or yeah, short box, kind of see some spin a little bit. Um, Thursday playing again. Again, don't need to make like a ton of throws pregame, and just make sure you're ready to go. Friday recovery day, and then feel good for Saturday. So in the course of the week, you're only having like the B day as like your off the mound as like your other higher day, and then Saturday your main day, and then the other side games are the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday games. It's like only enough throws that you need to make sure you're feeling good for the game.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I would structure it. I'm sure different pitching coaches at Driveline might structure it a little bit differently. Um, but that's kind of like how I would do it.
Yeah. I think one of the things that most high school kids and maybe even college kids get into the mindset of is that throwing off the mound once a week isn't enough intensity wise, and that there needs to be another additional day of higher intensity in there in order for them to
Mm,
continue developing their velo. Whereas like it's like this is your velo day. You know, every time you step on the mound and compete, that's your velo
yeah.
day. It's once a week. You're basically on a 1 day a week velo program throughout the entire season where you just let it eat, and the other days you're just trying to recover the body as best as you can to then get back on that velo day. So when you take that example and you take that same timeline of getting ready now on the strength and conditioning side, talk to me about how you go in and implement that as well, on top of it.
Yeah. Again, I think with the people that we see, if we're talking like pro guys, it's different to college guys, different to high school guys. Kind of like depends on that physical maturity. With high school guys in this example, personally, I would like them to probably be like twice a week. So in a perfect world, it would be probably like the Wednesday, Saturday lift in that example. To make like those higher days the same as the lifting. Depends on guy to guy. Like some guys might like lift Tuesday after the game or before a game. Still feel good for that Wednesday pen and then after on Saturday. I personally like the whatever your highest day of the week is, that should also be a lifting day. So Saturday would be like a non-negotiable lift day on that in that part. So that Sunday we don't have to re-stress our body, can kind of like fully take that day off, let our system bounce back. But that other day can kind of move around a little bit. Um, College a little bit different, typically like Monday off day. Um, Maybe a midweek game and then weekend doubleheaders or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, kind of depends on the level. So that can kind of shift some things around a little bit. Pro guys, I like a 4 or 5 day split because they're playing every day. We need to get like a little bit of a stimulus each day, and we don't want to spike that workload again. So we don't want to do like 2 higher days of lifting, like higher volume, or 3 higher days. We kind of do like 4 or 5 of an A, a B, maybe like one C series in there, just to try and like almost like keep like a baseline throughout the whole season rather than like huge spikes up and down.
Definitely, definitely. Dang, 4 a week. I was not hitting 4 a week in pro ball. I was about two a week, man.
Yeah.
Oh
Also
man.
depends on position. Like starters, they're on more of a set schedule. Relievers, you got to be
Relief,
ready
man. I
every
was
day.
ready every day.
Yeah.
Oh man, I
Yeah.
think let's talk about relievers, man. I
Yeah.
think high school kids that I'm working with are finding out that being a relief pitcher is harder than being a starting pitcher, man.
It is
Talk
the hard,
about
it's
how
the
to
worst.
talk about how you guys approach relief pitchers and the advice and the workload and the scheduling and maintenance that you are giving them so that they can feel their best at any day's moments. They pitch on a Monday, off day on a Tuesday. They've got their rivals coming in on a Wednesday, and they're back at it again on Wednesday because they only threw 25 pitches and they're going again. Like, how does a high school kid really get his body in tune? Because that's the biggest challenge that I had as a professional, and I can only
Hmm.
imagine, how it was as a high school. I didn't relieve in high school. I was a starter in high school,
Yeah.
so it was much easier. But in high school, I couldn't imagine like being on this like roller coaster of being ready, not being ready, whenever.
Yeah. The work starts 6 months before the season starts. Um, First thing is like you just have to be in shape. You need to be able to build your body up to be able to handle all that stress throughout the season. Um, I don't have any like specific data behind this, but I think guys who are just like How we test mid-thigh pull, like isometric mid-thigh pull. Guys who score higher than that, I think, are able to hold their velo throughout the season more. So like more total strength, the better you're able to kind of like regulate throughout the season, which makes sense. Like the more muscle you have, the stronger you are, the better you're able to kind of like ride that roller coaster and not see like those huge spikes. So big thing is like you just like physically need to develop, put on some weight, get stronger, move faster, do all that good stuff starting 6, 8, 9 months before the season even starts. Once you are getting closer to the season, that's when like the throwing volume can start to change where um you've gone through the on ramp, you've gone through like your velo training, and then now it's like you need to step on the mound 3, 4 times a week. So even on your recovery days, maybe you're making 10 throws down the mound where you're feeling the slope, and then you're throwing either like a mound velo or a pitch design or something like that, and then you're also throwing two live ABs. You're throwing like a live pen, so you're hitting your max effort multiple times a week, um, so that when you do get to this into the season, you can kind of handle those stressors.
And then what about the I don't know where I was going to go with that. I just had a complete brain fart there.
I just dropped so much wisdom that I just
No,
blew my mind.
I had something there, and then I just completely went. I wanted to know more, so I'm going to just completely switch topics here.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. There. What about the guys with summer coming up? Let's talk about summer ball, right? Summer ball very very difficult. I think a lot of guys have the thought. I think it's really easy for every kid out there to think that they want to have a really big summer. Oh, this is the summer. I'm going to do it. I'm going to add X amount of weight. I'm going to add X amount of velo, but then they have all of these games and they don't really realize with 2 practices still, and then on top of that you still got to maintain yourself. Like talk to me
Mhm.
talk to me about what you guys are doing with your guys who are needing to make a big jump this summer but are still in the travel ball realm and haven't taken it. I think some guys will take it and be like travel ball needs to be put on hold for a little bit and I need to just focus on player development. But I think those families and players are far and few between. I think I truly, truly believe in it for guys who need to like really make big time jumps. Like travel ball is just going to get in the way. And
Mhm.
it's not for everybody at every point in time. Travel ball definitely plays a role in the development of a player, and it serves a purpose, but not every single summer or whatever. So when a kid can't make that decision and like him and his family still are going to be in the travel ball scene but need to make big time gains, like what does that look like?
Yeah. Um, I think first thing is you just need to take an honest look at yourself, um, and see where you stack up against where you want to go. A big thing that we have with Driveline is we have our high school averages, we have our college averages, we have our pro averages. We can sort that from guys who throw 90 plus, how they move, how strong they are, how fast they are. Guys who have bat speeds 70 plus, guys who throw between 80 and 90. Like we have everything. And if you're a high schooler and you want to go to a power five somewhere and your numbers match up against just like power
Power
four,
forward, dude. Come on now.
power four now. Sorry, I'm still in 2017. Um, it's just like you just need to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, am I a guy who, if I step on campus there right now, I have a shot to play? Because you don't want to go to a school, sit for 4 years with a red shirt, and then maybe get a chance to play that fifth year. Um, you want to be able to step on campus, get a shot to play right away. And if you're not physically developed at that point, like you just have no shot. So big thing we can do is Johnny comes in and his overall strength score is in the 51st percentile, and guys that he's trying to go play against are on average in the 85th percentile, then maybe you shouldn't play travel ball and you just like physically need to develop if you have the skills. If you don't have the skills, then that's where it starts to get tricky, where it's like maybe we train really hard for 6 weeks, and then back half of the summer we can go play some ball, see if we have like the physical tools now to go and compete against those guys. Or it's like I'm really strong, like I show up, we get tested, really strong, you're in the 90th percentile, but your skill is in the 20th percentile. Then maybe you can go play some games and try to like improve that. We'll do some drills on the side. Hopefully we can clean some things up, but like just go compete. So it's like you just need to have an honest conversation. That's where coaches should be able to help there. Like, be honest with kids. You're not doing them a service by lying to them. Like, if you're a kid that says he wants to go play at LSU and couldn't play at whatever down the road, like you're just hurting that kid in the long run. So have an honest conversation with them. Like, we need to work on X, Y, and Z. Let's set a plan and then go attack it.
Yeah, I think that's great, man. I think if you're a high school kid or a college kid, even looking at that, listening to this, like that's one of the biggest decisions that you can make. I definitely fell into the hole in the rat race of travel ball. Again, I love travel ball. I think it definitely has a time and place, but for a young Matthew Della Rosa, I had all the skills in the world, the baseball knowledge, and I was just so undersized and definitely didn't take time in the summer. Just kept playing travel
Yeah.
ball, and then I looked up senior year and I'm looking at zero offers, nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, 1 year changed my entire life, 40 pounds heavier. And I didn't change my swing. I didn't change anything about my skill set. It's just like now the balls that I was popping up to right field are leaving the yard. And,
Mm-hmm.
fast forward 4 years, velo ticks up and getting drafted. So I'm a big
Yeah.
proponent of, taking that time to really develop strength wise. And even if you're strong, probably always get a little bit stronger, especially in high school. Don't just, let guys
Yeah.
catch up to you.
Yeah. And uh I'm like a strength coach now, and in high school I think I lifted maybe 10 times over the course of my whole high school.
Yeah.
Um yeah, showed up to college, 155 pounds, would just absolutely barrel a ball and it would barely get over the shortstop's head, just like hustle doubles all day. And I know if I would have taken the time in high school, gotten bigger, gotten stronger, maybe like I played at Division 3 in Wisconsin. Like, maybe if I, took the time early, those would translate into better skills. Maybe I do get a, lower level, mid major, D1, something like that. But I needed to take 2.5 years of college to physically develop versus like I could have just done it when I was 15, 16, 17. Like, if I did that, who knows what happens.
Yeah. Let's talk about a whole year schedule for a guy throwing. A guy who pitches consistently, ramps up, in January, the calendar flips over, he's ramping up, he's playing all the way through, let's call it fall baseball. It gets done at the end of, when does fall baseball get done? At the end of October, so he's thrown
Mm,
for 10 months in a row with a couple of breaks here and there. What does that guy do to help himself recover after the season, and then how does he progress into the next season as far as like on ramping and getting his body back in condition? I think there's a lot out right now on whether or not a guy should even stop throwing, right? I think there's a time
mm,
and place to throw and there's a time and place to not throw. I think right now I sit in the camp of like, hey, after the season's done, let's take 2, 3 weeks off of throwing, but then like, let's let the body recover and then let's pick up a football and, throw it around 2, 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be high
mm,
intensity, but I still want to make sure that, we're still getting those patterns and we're still keeping the arm because in my opinion, if you don't, keep the arm going, whether you're throwing baseballs or not, it takes 6 weeks or so just to even get the body back into, the volume that you can put on it in order to like make
mm,
any true strides as far as velo goes or getting on the mound. So also I think about some of the best athletes that I've played with against, coach now. They play football in the off season, and they're hucking that football around, and they're
mm.
coming back into baseball season, haven't touched a baseball, but they've made hundreds of throws with the football over the course of the off season. So curious what your kind of take and what you guys are kind of pumping out there as far as like education to guys in yearly structures and when to throw, when to take time off, things like that.
Yeah. I would say typically when guys come in into the off season, it's kind of up to the guy when they want to start throwing.
For pro guys or
I would
for
say
high school and
pro
college guys?
pro guys, yeah. It's like some guys are taking a week off, some guys are taking two, three, some guys are not throwing until end of October, maybe like mid-November, sometimes
Bro,
end of
I used to take like 2 months off from baseball
yeah,
from throwing in
yeah,
pro. Like I didn't really
yeah,
know much better. I just thought that's what
yeah.
you did.
Yep. And the guys that do that are the ones who are, really in tune with their body. They know they need X amount of weeks. They know that if they on ramp for 4 weeks after that, they'll be good to go. So those are like the special cases. But I'd say typically it's like anywhere from like 2 to 3 weeks of like we're just hitting like really like restoration lifts. They're doing some arm care, but we're not really doing any like throwing. And then that's when it progresses to that on ramp of hitting a couple B days per week, progressing into like hitting some A days towards that end of the 6 weeks, maybe like early that next block. But like that first 2 weeks is like restoration, get moving. If your hip's bothering you, let's get that looked at. Let's get that cleaned up right away. If your T-spine's locked up from throwing X amount of innings, like let's get that unlocked, get moving a little bit better. And then that first 6 weeks is like we're just like beating the crap out of them in the weight room. Like make sure that they're going to be able to handle um the week 6 through 12 or 6 through 18 of like we're gonna get after it.
Yep. I mean, for most kids, I think like how do you convince a parent or what do you tell a parent when you're trying to tell them that like, hey, your son doesn't need to take 4 months off of throwing? Like what does that conversation look like? Because I think most parents they'll see the numbers out there of the arm injuries and the easiest thing to do to prevent arm injuries is to just not throw. So if I don't throw my son, I'm helping and protecting, keeping his arms safe. But what is the repercussions of that? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And what are those conversations that y'all are having?
I think just educating the kid, the family, um, that it's not throwing in general that's causing the injuries. It's throwing as hard as you can for 10, 12 months out of the year. It's throwing in games, it's playing games all the time. It's doing showcases in the off season when you haven't thrown a ball in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Those are the high risk of injury. It's not doing a in a controlled setting with coaches watching you, like specifically ramping you up in a certain way that you're going to be able to throw for your season. I would say like early off-season injuries is very low because you're not throwing hard at all. Like you're doing 50, 60% maximum, like at the max. So it's not the throwing year round, it's the doing showcases, playing games like where you have to do those max intent throws year round is what causing issues, and having if you're playing fall ball and you haven't pitched all fall, and then your coach, you run out of guys to throw. So you're like, hey, Johnny, go get on the mound. We need 2 innings out of you. That's like when it could be an issue. It's like, um,
But like, what does a kid say to that? Like what does a kid say? And hopefully none of the kids that I play with think I do that because I definitely don't. I feel like the kids that I get to coach, like not trying to toot my own horn, but at least like they know that like I understand and I'm not just throwing kids on the mound. And kids will ask me to throw, and I'll be like, "When's the last time you threw?" They're like, "I
yeah,
don't know, like I just want to throw." And it's like, not worth
yeah,
it. Go sit down and shut up. But so like, what does
yeah,
a kid truly say though to a coach if he knows and he understands? Like, man, I'm not ready to pitch, but this guy's just using me because he needs an arm. How does that conversation
yeah.
look?
That's really hard for a kid to say no. Like I don't know, however old you are, like you're competitive. Like you want to go play, you want to go pitch, you want to go do it. So then that's where it falls on the coach that he needs to be better educated on how things should happen. Or for organizations having enough kids in fall ball to be able to play all those innings. Have enough pitchers that are have been training that way so that you don't have to throw the catcher who's been catching for 5 games on the weekend that he's just gonna like go on the mound because he's the only guy we have left. Like you need to be able to have enough players on the team and the coaches need to be educated on all the stuff on what they've been doing previous weeks, that week, what they have coming up. Like there's just like so much information that coaches, which is hard to handle. It's hard to keep track of all that stuff, but um kids are getting hurt and things are happening because coaches don't either care or not educated enough on it.
Yeah. I think the education piece is going to be hard to solve because, coaches, they have so much to do, the fundraisers, team events. I think if you wanted to coach at my school in high school, you also had to teach another
Mm-hmm.
class, right? You also had to coach another sport. I don't think that there's enough guys who are just like committed to baseball the way that like you and I are, who make it a profession, that are like actually helping these young men across the entire country. Now, there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely some out there who understand, and I'm not saying that, but I think, you and I have spoken to enough kids and we've seen enough baseball to understand the vast majority of coaches are just undereducated when it comes to what workload. I think it's just that what workload capacity is. I think if you could just solve
Mm-hmm.
workload capacity for most coaches and most kids across the nation, then they would be fine. And that's where I think, you guys are doing a great job with the pulse. That's where it's just like, but how do you get pulse
Mm-hmm.
and the education of what comes with pulse to every single person out there in every single high school? I
Yeah,
don't know.
it's
What do you
hard,
think?
and
How do you solve it?
I don't know. I don't have that answer. It's hard, but I just know that um the youth baseball is struggling because of that. Arm injuries are way up, and I think a big way to help that is like the weight room and just like getting kids more physically developed, trying different sports. I think doing like different sports to get yourself into like different positions throughout the part of the year, like doing gymnastics, like handstands, like all that kind
I
of
go
stuff.
back. My kid's definitely getting into gymnastics. My
Yeah,
kid's getting
do some
into
back bridges.
gymnastics and some freaking boxing, dude. I want him to learn how to like
Oh
use
yeah,
his hips at a young age to just like throw
yeah,
punches, and I'll be like, now we're gonna use that to swing, buddy.
yeah,
Now we're gonna hit
yeah.
tanks.
Yeah, boxing, gymnastics, and soccer. Like get the foot speed up, get the weird positions with gymnastics, get the hand eye with boxing, like get all that stuff going.
Definitely, definitely. And when you say in shape too, going way back to when you were talking about weight room, can you talk about being in shape as opposed to just being strong, like physically strong? Like, what does being in shape mean? Because I think if you don't say it, I'm definitely going to come in and say it because I think most kids hate to do this one thing, but that's a part of being in shape. Like, what does being in shape actually mean?
Um, I think being able to sprint a double or triple and not be out of breath and being able to hit a ball to the wall or being in center field and having to run all over the place, your pitcher's getting shelled and have to run multiple sprints over and over again. And then be able to take a pitch and hit it 400 feet. Like there's just like so many different parts. Like you need to be able to move fast and be able to move fast over and over again.
Yeah. I think a lot of kids will think like get strong, go to the weight room, and they'll just neglect the conditioning component of it. And I'm not saying conditioning as far as like, running miles and miles, but it's just maybe just like we're doing battle ropes for 30-second,
Mm-hmm.
intervals, and we're doing, med ball slams with, very little breaks in there. And we're doing, 5-10-5 shuffles, and we're doing shuffle, shuffle sprints or flying tens, whatever it may be. But
Mm-hmm.
like you're getting that, stimulus of high output energy as opposed to just repping out weights in the weight room. I think that's
Yeah.
if I had to guess, like that's the biggest area that most kids will leave on the table because they're just like so in their own dome. I know I was, where it's just like, oh, I got to get bigger. And they never
Yeah.
said anything about getting more like in conditioning shape. They're just like, you got to get bigger. So it's just like, all right, I'm gonna
Yeah.
go squat and lift and do lunges and whatever, and like whatever. Screw the running. I'm
Yeah.
tired.
Which which is important. Like you should be able to lift the house. We want our guys to be really strong. But we also want them to be able to move. And baseball is like such a fine motor movement pattern sport. Like you just need to like yeah, you need all that other stuff, other than just like deadlift 500 pounds, which is cool, and you should be able to do that. That'd be awesome. But also, yeah, that other stuff is very important, and being strong in like real deep ranges of motion too, instead of just doing like your half reps. Being able to do a deep ISO push up hold where your chest is hitting the ground, your arms are way behind yourself, like all that stuff is very, very important.
Last question here, and then we'll open it up for questions for anybody that is on here that actually has a question. Um, you guys are so data driven. You guys are so into the science, and it's so great when it comes to the training component. And then you get on that field, and it all goes out the window. You don't, it doesn't matter. How do you, what are the conversations like when it comes to this is what we're doing for training? And now you have to flip that switch. None of that stuff needs to be in your head, and it's time to go compete. How do
Yeah.
you get guys, even at the professional level, to understand that?
Yeah, it's really hard. And baseball is so hard that it's just like it you could do all the training in the world and have the perfect training plan. You step on the in the box and you could go for 4 Ks. Like it's just really hard. It's a really hard sport. Um, so I think we do a really good job at creating environments that are harder than the game. Um, we have down in Arizona, we have a pitching machine called the Traject, where it's
Y'all got one of
million
those?
dollar
God
yeah,
dang,
$1 million
bro.
machine. Yeah. You can put video of Corbin Burns on there. I'll have all of his spin metrics coming at you. And we'll have guys hit off that, 3, 4 times a week. So they're seeing as close to game reps as possible without actually being in there. On days they're not doing that, they're seeing 90-mile-an-hour sliders come out of a pitching machine where they're closed stands trying to hit it the opposite way. Like the environments that the hitting specifically creates is just so much harder than the actual game. Where if you come in and you barrel balls all day, like you might be the best hitter alive, because like that just never happens. We had a pro guy a couple off seasons ago where he came in and he broke like 3 or 4 bats in the first week. And he just like looked at the hitting coach and was like, I've never broken a bat in off season training before. Like period. And he was like a 10-year big leaguer. He's like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? It's like because like you've not been very good the last 3 or 4 years. We need to make this really, really hard so that when you get back into actual gameplay, that slows down for you and makes it a lot easier for you. Kent went out next year, had like a career year. Like it's just like it's so important that you want to put yourself in difficult situations so that you can figure out ways out of that so that when you see things in real life and in live situation, it slows down for you.
Great answer. Great answer right there. Um, Anybody on the call right now have a question? I think this is a great time to ask it, even if it's just the simplest question, man. You've got somebody here who trains with big leaguers all day long. Now would be the great time to ask that question.
Um, so I'm like a two-way player, and so I pitch like probably once a week, like for a start, and I also lift like early in the morning. Like, would you say how many days should I be lifting? Like, should it be like 5 days, 3 days, 2 days? What would you like recommend? How many days?
Yeah. How many games per week are you playing?
3 games a week probably, and we're like kind of going to the end of the season, so that might go to two. We're playing like probably Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
Gotcha. I would say typically, depending on how often you say you were lifting.
Uh, Probably like 4 days a week, maybe 3 days a week.
Gotcha. I think that's probably a decent amount. Probably pretty good at that. I would just as you're getting closer to the end of the season, like getting towards playoffs, like you want to make sure that you're feeling really good for those games. So I would like monitor the volume and the intensity that you're doing. And if there's a day that you're not feeling great, there's no shame in, knocking one or two sets off everything or taking the load on the lift down a little bit more just to make sure that you're feeling really good for those games. I think it's still important to kind of stay with a routine if you've been having that routine and you feel pretty good with it, to kind of stick with that. But if if you need to start on Friday, your Wednesday lift, instead of, benching out like almost like a max or like really getting after it, it's okay to like drop that volume a little bit, to make sure that you're feeling really good for your start. So just kind of like tinker with um, how like what your effort level is, to make sure that you're feeling good for those games.
Okay, thank you.
And Topher, I would say too on that, not that you asked me, but I will put my opinion in there. I would say that 4 times a week with 3 games and practices on top of that, that's probably like the high end. Like you definitely don't really need to be going higher than that. In most cases, they would probably even drop you to 3 days a week. I think 3 days is the kind of the sweet spot for guys who are trying to gain some weight in season, and 2 days for guys who are kind of physically more mature and are just hanging, maintaining. You never really maintain. You're either getting weaker or stronger. But I
Great,
think the
nice.
4 days, yeah. I think the 4 to 5 days, like especially with summer ball coming up, like I think 5 days would be so aggressive for anybody to live 5 days a week and then go play, tournaments all weekend. 4 days, maybe you can get away with it in summer ball. If you're taking care of your body, you're getting your nutrition in, your sleep, your recovery, you're hammering all of that. Even still, that would be like on the high end in my opinion. But I think three days is like the sweet spot that you'll want to stay at. And then if a game gets rained out or you have less games that week or something, then you can kind of maybe substitute that 4th day in there. But I wouldn't go higher than the 4 days for sure
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and the playing the games is the most important part if it's like playoffs, like getting towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
So err on the side of caution.
I understand. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, there's probably gonna be no more questions. So, Tyler, hey man, really, really appreciate you coming on here and doing this for me, man. Really enjoyed the conversation that we were able to have. Hopefully, we get to have more conversations, man.
Yeah, for
If
sure.
there's anything that I can ever do for you, man, let me know. I'm sure I'll reach out to you more and more as our relationship builds again. Now that we're both back in the baseball world, but man, it was a great privilege getting you on here, and hopefully, we can take some of this content and share it with the world and help give some of this great information out there.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. Yeah, anytime you wanna chop it up some more, just let me know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, man. Hey, go keep making young baseball players' lives better, man. And old guys
Try our
too.
best.
Those
Yeah,
old guys need love too, man. They're going
yeah,
through it.
yeah. Quick side story. One of my first athletes down here, 74-year-old guy,
Oh,
had
love it. He
had,
came in the
had
drive
made
line.
yeah had made like ungodly amounts of money and was playing like in senior old man baseball, and he just like wanted to train and get better. And he was like, yeah, like 74 years old, did like all the strength tests, got motion captured, everything. It was sick.
Well, you got to tell us like how it went, bro. You got to tell us where he started, what his workout program was like, because obviously he's not doing the regular workout program, and then
Yeah.
where he got to.
Oh, we were lifting weights. We were
Oh,
goblet
duh. But like,
squatting. We
okay.
were we were bench pressing. We were doing a bunch of stuff. His bat speed, I can't remember the exact number, but we got it like a 5 or 6 mile an hour jump in 6 weeks because he just like had never obviously done anything like this before. Um, yeah, I think he lived in Guam, but then he like had houses all over the place. So then he like disappeared for like a year because he was traveling playing games, and then just like popped in randomly. And I put on like 5 or 6 pounds of muscle and just like was beefed up, and it was pretty sick.
Let's go, dude. Remote
Yeah,
guy, I'm guessing. Just
yeah,
like, here's
yeah.
your program, go execute it.
Oh yeah. Only
Love it.
communicated by email. Like never texted him, but like still
Old school,
I'll still get
baby.
I'll get an email from him like every like 6 weeks, just like asking how everything's going. He's awesome.
Bro, technically, my boy a free agent, dude. He needs to get
Yeah,
be picked up.
Oh
The
yeah,
Braves ERA is looking shaky. The Rockies might need a guy.
they need
They
a
might,
manager too.
they need to call your boy Trevor Bauer over there, Mr. Driveline
Oh boy,
himself, dog.
yeah,
Y'all
yeah.
still claim him?
He doesn't train with us anymore because he has his own place down here. Yeah, I'm not sure. He was before my time at Driveline. But I know some guys that work here had worked with him a bunch. Said he was always good to them and just kind
Yeah,
of did his
great
thing.
guy.
Was
I random side story here. I actually got to train with him when I was down in Houston. I trained at the Texas Baseball Ranch for 2 off
Mhm.
seasons, and then trained at DST, which I think I talked to you about. They got a DST
Yeah,
out in Arizona now too, but it was in Houston. And the place that I was going to was just like a hotbed for players. Like Alex Bregman trained there, Carlos Correa trained there, Key Brian Hayes
mm.
trained there. Trevor Bauer stopped in. First off, dude pulled up in a Pagani. I don't even know if you know what a Pagani is, but I'm
Oh
just
yeah,
like, God
oh
dang,
yeah,
bro, like different. And then I got to, on the day that he was there, I watched him go live AB versus Alex Bregman. And that was pretty fun to watch, just like live
I'm sure.
as a
I'm sure
minor
there was no
leaguer, just
trash talking
watching.
going on.
None, they were very polite to each other
Yeah,
throughout the whole
yeah,
time. But no, seriously, Bauer was just like, here's my fastball right here. Typical Bauer
yeah,
stuff that he does now. He
yeah,
does that in training. Like, that's not a show. That's just like who the guy is. And then
yeah,
Bregman talking his smack, man. And it was just fun to watch him go back and forth, watching two guys
yeah,
who are
yeah.
elite.
Seeing guys at the highest level just compete, it's just like a different level. Like if you think you're competitive, like the second those guys are like in game mode, like it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Well, you have a great rest of your day. Hey, to everybody out there, wish your mother a happy Mother's Day if you haven't already. If you haven't already, you're a terrible son, anyways. So,
Yeah.
thanks again for your time, brother.
Appreciate you.
All right.